Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing the truth on if your ex will think of you this Christmas. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing the truth on if your ex will think of you this Christmas. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will want to know if your ex is likely to think of you on Christmas Day. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing the likelihood of your ex thinking of you at Christmas in 3 different situations. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is if you broke up this year after a short relationship. So when I say a short relationship, I mean a relationship which was less than a year. And with me suggesting that you've been in a short-term relationship and it ended this year, what I'm in essence saying is that you were not together last Christmas. So you have never spent a Christmas Day together, and hence when this Christmas Day comes along, you're wondering, will my ex think of me? I wasn't even with them last Christmas. Will they? Won't they? How could they? Now, in my opinion, your ex-dumper is likely to think of you this Christmas Day. Now, even though you weren't together last Christmas, you will still likely be on their mind and in their thoughts because you were part of their recent history. Now, of course, if you were in a very, very, very short-term relationship and it began in January and it ended by February, then we have to use our common sense and suggest that you're probably less likely to be thought of than if your short-term relationship began in, for instance, August and ended in October. So we have to use a degree of common sense when we consider this, but generally speaking, if you were in a relationship this year, then even if you were not together last Christmas Day, I do believe there is a strong possibility that your ex-dumper will be thinking of you. And this is because Christmas Day acts as a natural timepiece for people to reflect on the year previous. It's very natural to think back on what you've been doing throughout the year on Christmas Day. Now, of course, there are other days of the year which trigger these types of thoughts and feelings. One, very much round the corner with New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve being even more powerful than Christmas Day regarding reflection. But when we consider Christmas Day and whether or not your ex-dumper is likely to think of you on Christmas Day, even if you were in a short-term relationship, even if your relationship lasted just a couple of months, as long as it was in the back end of the year, I think they're definitely going to be thinking of you. Now, even if the relationship was at the front end of the year, if it was 5 or 6 months long, which I would still constitute as a short-term relationship, I think there is a strong possibility that your ex-dumper will be thinking of you. Now, one of the reasons why I believe this is that even if you've been together just a short period of time, you would often have spoke about things in the future. And one of those things is likely to be plans for Christmas. So you might know your ex's plans for Christmas. They might know your plans for Christmas. And these types of thoughts and feelings can come to us on Christmas Day because there are memories connected with Christmas. Imagine it almost as like a hashtag on social media, hashtag Christmas. When you get to Christmas Day, you are flooded with the thoughts of hashtag Christmas. Anything you've heard about Christmas within the last few months in particular is going to come into your mind. And this would certainly connect with things that your ex-dumper told you and that you told your ex-dumper. Now, the fact that you can probably remember what your ex told you they're going to be doing on Christmas Day would surely prove to you that if you can remember what they've told you, they're likely to remember what you told them. And like I said, anything regarding this concept of hashtag Christmas, the thoughts and the feelings that come to us on Christmas Day, which are connected to the terminology that we've been speaking about over the last few months, is going to come into your mind. So in essence, I do believe that even if you didn't celebrate Christmas Day together last year, if you were together this year, even if for a short period of time, your ex-badumper is very likely to think of you on Christmas Day. Now, are they likely to reach out to you? Are they likely to send you a message saying Happy Christmas? Are they likely to say Merry Christmas to you if you were in a very short-term relationship and it lasted between January and February? Well, I would suggest not. If you were together at the front end of the year, a long time ago now in essence, and unfortunately it didn't last very long, I do not think you're going to get a Christmas message from your ex. However, if you broke up in November and you were together 6-7 months, I'm still calling that a short-term relationship, but of course you can see there is a huge difference. And I think there is a possibility that you might receive that text from your ex. Now, incidentally, you shouldn't be holding this as a marker about whether or not you can get your ex back. Just because you might not hear from your ex on Christmas Day, it doesn't mean you can't hear from them on a random Tuesday in January. It doesn't work as though they have to message you on the day for you to have any chance of getting back together. Of course, it is more of a pull. There is more of an excuse, you could say, to reach out, but it doesn't mean it's the be-all and end-all. So if you're going to be thinking to myself, well, I'm only going to be happy on Christmas Day if I'm going to hear from my ex, then you might, unfortunately, be disappointed if you've been in a short-term relationship, especially if that relationship ended many, many months ago. Please don't hold the stock of whether or not your ex reaches out to you on Christmas Day as a way of making you have a great holiday season. You shouldn't be feeling like that. It's got to be about you, your friends, your family. You can have a great day even if your ex doesn't contact you. And like I said, it doesn't even necessarily mean that you won't hear from them in the future if they don't reach out to you on the big day itself. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is if you broke up this year after a long relationship. So this is somewhat similar to point number 1 with one huge difference. Your relationship was long term, and I'm constituting this as more than a year. And what this means is that you were together on previous Christmas days. So whether it was 1 year, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can tell, you were together on the big day. So you have memories connected to Christmas Day. And therefore I strongly suggest that your ex-badumper is going to be thinking of you at Christmas time. Your ex-badumper ended the relationship, and it was this year, that being the key, if you broke up this year after a long relationship. So they've ended the relationship this year. This is the first Christmas you haven't been together. And now you're in a position where on Christmas Day you're wondering if they're going to be thinking of you? Absolutely. Because on Christmas Day it's very, very natural to think back to last Christmas Day. It's very, very natural to be thinking about what you did, what I did, what's going on last Christmas. It is a special marker. Oh, what was I doing last Christmas? And if you were together with your ex last Christmas, they are going to be thinking about you. I can be as certain as I can be, 99.9%, that your ex-badumper will think of you this Christmas Day if you were with them last Christmas Day, let alone prior Christmas days. Of course, all of those memories constitute as triggers. Even if they don't actively want to think about you, there are going to be so many things which can pull of them to make them think of you and start to reminisce. And this could actually help you maybe one day get your ex back, because positive triggers, if you had a good experience last Christmas, for instance, could play in your favour for your ex-badumper to one day reach out to you. Again, it doesn't have to be today. It doesn't mean that they've got to message you Merry Christmas for them to want to get back together. It could be the slow but sure building of romantic emotional attraction in their mind towards you, which begins with a positive memory generated by a trigger, such as a certain movie comes on TV. And I think, when was the last time I saw this Christmas film? Oh, I know, it was with my ex last year. And then they think back to that, it was a great time. That can be the first few drops of romantic emotional attraction starting to build up in their mind towards you, which could then start to cascade over the coming days, weeks, and maybe even months. And then you randomly hear from your ex in March. That's how sometimes it can work. So if you were in a long-term relationship, that's what I'm suggesting is more than a year, especially if it was multiple years, you would have built up memories on Christmas Day itself. So when your ex-dumper gets to Christmas Day, when the big day arrives, they will naturally think back, either because we're just reminiscing or because there is a trigger. It could be a movie, it could be a song, it could be food, whatever it may be. They're going to think back to times when you two were together. And especially if those days and memories and moments were good, this can be the beginning of them one day wanting to reach out to you. It might even be this Christmas. You might even get that magic message saying Merry Christmas, and you can build from there. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, especially if you're moving into that communication stage and you want to know what to do if you receive that magic Christmas text, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast, about the truth on if your ex will think of you this Christmas. And point number 3 is if you broke up more than a year ago. So this is a bit different to the first 2 points. Whereas in points numbers 1 and 2, I was discussing what would happen if you broke up this very year. Okay, we're talking in the last 11 months or so, your breakup took place. But what happens if your breakup took place more than a year ago? Well, I would suggest that unfortunately it's less likely that your ex-dumper is going to think of you on Christmas Day, but not necessarily impossible. So please listen through to my thoughts and feelings on this. If you were in a long-term relationship which lasted many years or decades theoretically, then you would have built up so many memories on Christmas days gone by. So even if you broke up more than a year ago, and hence this isn't the first Christmas you were apart, but actually last Christmas you were also not together, even though that is the scenario, you've built up so many memories, there are going to be so many triggers, then there's every chance that on Christmas Day your ex will still think of you. Again, the triggers could be a movie on, maybe they listen to a song, which of course is a Christmassy song. It's only going to be played at Christmas time. That means there are less opportunities for them to have heard it throughout the years. It's only going to be at this time of year. This could be something which makes them think of you. And again, it could be the initial moment of them starting to think positive thoughts, growing romantic emotional attraction, and maybe reaching out to you in the future, possibly even on Christmas Day itself. However, if your relationship was not a long-term relationship, if it was just a matter of months, or maybe it was more than a year, but your breakup was now 5 years ago, if that's the situation, then unfortunately there's less chance of your ex-dumper thinking of you this Christmas Day. If it's been multiple years, multiple Christmases gone by that you were not together, this makes it less likely for them to think of you. And if your relationship wasn't long in the first place, it makes it even less likely, sadly. And the reason for this is because once Christmas Day arrives, like I said earlier, you will naturally think back to last Christmas. And if last Christmas didn't include you, then this means that there's less chance of them thinking of you this Christmas. Even if you were together many, many years, if you've been broke up many, many years, then each year that ticks by, they're going to be less likely to think of you because these triggers that will make them think of you would have come and gone many times before potentially, and the feelings and the emotion, there's going to be less pull, sadly. But if your relationship was somewhat short, a few months, maybe it was even slightly more than a year or so, but you've been broken up 2, 3, 4 years, there's been all of these Christmases past your relationship, then maybe the first one they did think of you. But right now, those memories, sadly, are likely to fade. Now, of course, this can be very painful to hear, and you could be very worried about this potential situation, what I'm describing, that they don't think of you. But you need to realise that nobody knows for certain. You know, I can't guarantee your ex won't think of you, just as I can't guarantee that they will. So even though I'm saying it's less likely, it doesn't mean it's not possible. And if you still feel worried, if you still feel really down about this, then you need to speak with your friends, your family, maybe even a local doctor, so you make sure that you can get through this holiday season with as much positivity as possible. Because listen, with or without your ex, you will have a positive future. Whether or not your ex texts you on Christmas Day, whether or not they even think of you on Christmas Day. You can and will get through this. This is just a temporary mindset. And even if you feel that you've been really, really down for a long, long, long time, I promise you, you will still get out the other side of this tunnel. And next year can be the best year of your life. Even if this year wasn't, even if last year wasn't, next year can. You can start afresh. And who knows? Maybe you start afresh, you make new connections, you're really moving forward, and then out of the blue, your ex texts you when you least expect it. You never know if they're going to be part of a further chapter in your life, even if right now they're absent. So please, from what I'm saying, don't hold it as absolute guarantee that maybe your ex won't think of you if you was in a short-term relationship and it ended many years ago. It might still happen. And even if it doesn't, you don't want to hold your ex to be the one to give you that happiness. Happiness comes from within. Grow as a person, treat other people with respect, live your life to the full, and you will get the happiness that you crave and you deserve. You know, the more you put into life, the more you're also likely to get out of it. So stay positive and please don't give up. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.